Hey guys, welcome to season 2, C's Get Degrees. We have Genesis Amaris Kemp. As she would say, Chad, go take some hot tea and honey. But yeah, no, she's on the podcast here. We're going to be talking about her brand new book, The Chocolate Drip in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace. Did I get that correct?
Chocolate drop in corporate America. From the pit to the palace. I like that little drip. You try to be like drip, drip, drip.
We were laughing since day for the first minute here, so I added that hot tea and honey because she was jumping on my boat because my voice is shot. And she goes, "Hey, this is what we need to do." And then she got in the hottie toddies. I'm like, I would love them. I would love them. We just can't do them. So, but no, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Where are you calling in from?
Houston, Texas.
No, let's dip into the book a little bit here. So what was the reason why, or vice versa? Let's back it up on the other reason. How did a book drop on your lap?
So, a day of frustration in corporate America, to be exact, where I just had my moment of saying enough was enough. I was tired of the baloney, and I literally whipped out my phone and I wrote down the words chocolate drop in corporate America. And I wrote about like 3 sentences, and then I left it alone for a minute. And then I went to this church group here at this mega church in Houston where I met another author, and like it was like she was kind of like my Shira. I was like, dang, this girl is on fire. Like, she's that boss woman. Like, she's like, owning her own time, doing these incredible things. I was like, man, I need to get on her level. And not in an envious way or a jealousy way. It was just more of a kind of, I was admiring her because it was something that I wanted to do. So I chatted with her for a bit. Then I was like, a week went by and I was like, you know what? I'm going to hit her up. I'm going to say, hey, do you want to meet me at Starbucks for coffee? Like my treat or whatnot. So she finally said yes. And I was like, yay. So we went on a coffee chat or whatnot. And then I was kind of sharing with her some of my writing pieces because I've always been a writer. It was just my way of, releasing the thoughts out of my head, and it was therapeutic. And it was like, hey, have you ever thought about writing a book? I was like, no, not really. I don't want people in my business or whatnot. And then I was like, okay, well, God has kind of been calling me to write a book, but it was just my flesh, my disobedience, me not listening, doing what Genesis wants to do when she wants to do it. And I was like, you know what? Let me take a page out of my husband's book and pump my brakes and drive slow. So then that's kind of how the book was birthed. I tell people it was my Mary and Elizabeth story, and metaphorically my baby leaped and my baby was my book.
And yours is a little bit more drawn out and designed properly. I got hey, you got an awesome story, you're writing a book. I'm not writing a book. Yeah, you're writing a book. So there's a book coming from me this fall, but
nice.
I'm a little bit more rough around the edges when it comes to that stuff. To me, just by how you're explaining it, being an author is a little bit more natural to you versus me. I'm say what it is, and then someone's like, dude, slow down. What? Slow down. What? What did you just say? Slow. I don't even remember what I just said. And my biggest issue that I'm going to fight with this is going to be having writing sessions. To at least attempt to slow my brain down to kind of, like, I've got outlines and stuff, but just connect the dots with everything.
Yeah. So my advice, I guess I would give to you is like, find your groove. Like, for me, some of my inspiration comes when I watch a movie, or if I listen to some CHH, which is like Christian hip hop, or if I listen to some country music or whatnot. That's where kind of like little glimpse of inspiration or spurts come, or even movies. I'm a big movie lover. That's one thing I hate about the pandemic, is that you can't really do things you like to do. But yeah, and I would kind of just like whenever I'm going through something, that's when I write. Or if I feel a certain way, I write, versus just having these little faux pas or word vomits, I like to call them, and just saying something that I can't take back. So I'm like, oh, let me write it.
And I'm reaching for this that had a few word vomits the last couple days. But as we were discussing prior to me hitting record, this is where the book's going to come from. And you guys were on audio here, but this is my whole outline for the class I'm currently taking at church. So I think it's going to be a big collaboration of everything. And I wanted a collaboration of everything because it's a lot easier for me as a learner. So I don't know how your learning style is, but at least my learning style is kind of having a mentor ahead of me to kind of walk me through it. Mm-hmm. and kind of say, okay, if you go left, this is what's going to happen. If you go right, this is what's going to happen. I tend to just bust through walls and then be like, what wall did I go through? And then it's like what your husband said, pump your brakes, back her up. Oh crap, you have a hole in the wall. So it's going to be a small step forward, but it's also, I would love that collaboration with people as not as extra material. I don't even care about the extra material part. It's how many people we can help, like you said prior. Yeah. How many people are going to get impacted with this? I'm not even going to write it as a punch, and I don't want to use the term as a punch. I want to provide a lot of value in it for someone going through the same situation I had or what people went through. But I also want it to where I'd rather showcase them than me. And the older I'm getting and more on my Jesus journey I'm getting, at times I can be selfish a lot, but I'm learning that the magic happens when you step away and kind of just let it naturally occur.
I resonate with that, because sometimes we as people could be selfish by nature, but then we could also be creatures of habits. And it's sometimes whenever we kind of peel the onion layers back and then we look at the core of the onion where we really realize what really matters. Because there's times where I'm like, no, I don't want to do that, or I want to do it this way. And then I have to realize it's not just about Genesis, it's about the people that are around you that you're affecting. And my older sister, Brittany, she always tells me that. She's like, you could be like a selfish little twitch sometimes. I'm like, what? And I was like, no, not really. It's like, I like what I like. I want what I want, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And I respect her constructive criticism, because even though she's older and we're now just getting back in a groove where like we could kind of hang out like girlfriends, because she has kids, I don't have kids, she's married, I'm married, but it's just like we're kind of on different wavelengths. But now that we're older and we're getting to really understand one another, then I kind of see where she was coming from. Because there were times where like I could do something for my niece or nephew, but I was like, I want to do it when I want to do it. I don't want you to make me feel like I'm obligated to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's me and you are pretty much in the same boat. I'm a little bit, and you didn't know this part, but I went through a divorce and now I'm 3 years single. So I'm kind of in that good and bad leg stage. I'm using the term leg stage. There's not enough dating in there to kind of soften me up. And I'm gonna laugh at how I say that. Obviously, God softened me up big time. I still need to learn how to cry one of these days, but it's just, we're so dependent on ourselves. Instead of being like interdependent, we're not intradependent, but like we're so independent. We need to be more intra or inter, whatever the fancy word is.
I guess God is all up in this mix today, because I was single for like 2.5 years before I met my husband. Prior to my husband, I was dating an investment banker, and I was like, okay, I thought he was the one or whatnot, but then everyone else around me is like, oh no, he's not the one. And I just kept, disregarding the signs. I was like, okay, God sent me the fire truck. He sent me a boat. He sent me a life jacket. And I'm like, no, this guy is it or whatnot. And he wasn't really it. And it just took like that one breaking point for me to like realize that, okay, this is not who God wants me to be with. And had I married him, like I would have been divorced now. And it was like, oh, okay, I want to get married by this time. I want to have kids by this time. Like I had my whole life laid out. And I was like, you know what? God is like telling me, okay, you're telling me what you want, but I'm trying to tell you what you need. And whenever I met my husband, like I had like literally all these like requirements on like sticky notes and paper. I was like, this is what I want in a guy. Like I need him to make X amount of dollars. I need him to do this. I need him to do that. I was like, what are your long-term goals? What are your short-term goals? Then I was like, and if this date goes well, then maybe we could go to the movies afterwards if this dinner's good. And he's like, okay. Then the next day after that, he's like, okay, you were really cool and fun, but I just don't think this is going to mesh. And I was like, okay. I was like, bye, Felicia, on to the next. And it was so hard because I just liked what I liked. And there was a certain type of like guy that I dated, because all in high school, I dated a Hispanic guy. Then after that, I dated my my sister's kid's dad. He's Caucasian, and his older brother I dated, Scotty, who's like tight pants wearing Wranglers or whatever. And I was like, this is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. Like, because you're so different and I'm so different and we just can't see eye to eye. Then I get to my husband and they're like, oh, he's Black. And I'm like, oh, he's a person. Like, what would he be? Like, and because everyone's like, oh, well, you always dated white boys or Mexicans or whatnot, and now you bring home this Black guy or whatnot. So, and it's funny because my dad was South American and my mom is Caribbean, so it's like totally different. And I was like, oh well, I like who I like, and you just can't help who you fall in love with. But I guess fast forwarding the story, it was hard to get into that dating scene because I was like, I had all these requirements, because like after you've been through certain relationships and things didn't work, it's like you don't want to waste time. Like I was like, I don't have time to waste. Like I'm not trying to play the field. So I pretty much told my husband 3 years into dating, I was like, men build homes and boys shack. Are you trying to shack or are you trying to build? Because I need to know now. This is like 3 years. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So
I never heard it that way. That's awesome.
So if he were to come out on this live, he'll probably like, yeah, she forced me to marry her. And I was like, I did not. I just told you. Men build homes and boys shack. I'm trying to be with a man and I want to build a home. So which one are you gonna be?
And guys, we completely went off topic, but I'm gonna keep going with this because she hit the nail on the head and she had a lot of magic in there. And I want to keep digging into this magic. Okay, so all you guys, well, you took time. Well, okay. Time was needed to get to where you're at. And time is definitely needed for where I need to be and where I need to get to where I need to be at on his terms. I'm going to say his terms, not our terms. The number one, there's two things that I just started smiling at and I didn't want to pounce on it and I wanted to wait till you finished. The number one, where everyone in their 20s wants to get a brand new house, brand new, and they, oh, my wife did this, so we want all the kids, we want all the cars, blah, 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 like the whole list of shit.
Yeah.
That is supposed to be on there. And then the second part is, well, I want, this type, this person, this how I do it, whatever. And I blatantly went in my head, I'm like, okay, so the first time I want all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, someone told me straight out, they're like, so you got married, you wanted to have a family, you wanted to go get a farm or whatever it is. I had my whole list of goals. And they're like, what do you got? Nothing. And it's like, what? And they're like, no, do you have it all? I'm like, no. Why? I'm like, I have no clue. And then they went to the second one, and this topic's been twice actually. And ideally, technically, the first time, here's a little tip with guys: when God talks, you listen, but it takes a few times to kind of whack it in my head. So the first time my teacher was saying, he goes, I wanted this certain type, for me it would be blonde hair, blue eyes, certain height, whatever, kind of outdoorsy, whatever. And I'm keep hearing this pattern where he goes, I completely strip myself down, not naked, but just strip myself down. And he goes, you know what, realize? He's like, does she love Jesus more than I do? Yes. He goes, what was the other one? There was something else too, but he's like, you know what? He goes, after that, everything else came. He goes, we have our boundaries of saying, hey, that's not my thing. You go do your thing, whatever. But he's like, once I stripped away all the wants, and then he's like, oh, that's what you're getting in a good way. And I'm not saying, in a negative way how that came out. He's like, my life completely went for the better.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Cause my husband was not like my paper guy. And I tell him that you weren't the guy I wanted on paper. Like, I was going places, like, well, I still am going places, but I was like, I wanted to make X amount of money. Like, I wanted him to have all these nice shoes, like, because I see all the guys I work with in oil and gas, like the cars they drive, the things they do. And I was like, I'm used to going to these nice 5-star restaurants or whatnot when I was with this investment banker. Like, I'm used to like, oh, you want to go to the Houston Texans club? Okay, we're gonna go there. You want to go here? Yeah, we're gonna go here. But I was like, those are all materialistic things. Like, how does he treat me? How does he treat his mother? Like, and he was also a father, so like I had to assume the responsibilities of a stepmom. And then whenever you're taking care of somebody's kid that is not yours, like, you have to make sure you love that kid as you would love your own kid, because that kid is a part of who you are with. Like, it's a package deal. Like, you can be like, oh yeah, I love your dad, but I really don't love you, kid. Sorry. No, you can't do like you can't do that. And then so like on my list, I was like, okay, I don't want a guy that has kids because it was so hard. And then I'm just here sitting looking. I was like, oh my gosh, I sound like a superficial bimbo because I was so used to being kept and living a certain lifestyle. I thought that was everything, when in reality, all I needed to be was comfortable with myself, be the woman that God created me to be that masterpiece, be that fun, energetic, like free spirited girl who loves to travel, who loves to give to other people and stuff like that. And then the rest will kind of fall into place, kind of like you were saying, Chad. But if I kept saying, oh, yeah, I want him to look this way, I want him to be built like this, I want him to be that, looking like that rock, that mixed breed, or looking like whatever. And then I get this guy, I'm like, ooh, okay, different, but okay, I can work with it.
I don't even know what he has next for me, to be honest. Because I've had all my types, and I am friends with one that's completely different of those types. But it's friend right now because I am in the middle of a calling, and I'm gonna say it that way. And the people that know that are further enough in their journey to understand it. I'm in one town right now. I've been called to go to a different town.
Mm.
And that switch over to a different town is going to occur in 2 months. Because I have a place where I'm going to live. Yes, it's going to be on the higher side. For once in my life, I'm going to something nice. The running joke down there is, and I'm half city, half country. So I'm going to sound a little country here. And like you said, you're next to the guys all the time. I'm going to be the biggest redneck in the most upper top tier yuppieville type apartment out there. in a good way. Because, and it's not, I didn't choose that for image. Mm-hmm. I applied and, boom, boom, boom. Like when it's his timing, it comes, and it comes fast. Not fast, but like, boom, it comes. There's a little less resistance, and it's very tough to explain it to someone that doesn't, like, you get it, I get it. Like, people, we call them God bombs, but like, boom, they come and they almost puke out, where it's like, oh, that's cool. Okay, what's next? And it just naturally, like, they're in sync with everything. It just naturally rolls out. And that was the place where it's like, someone suggested, like, go over there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So I applied, boom. Like within 2 minutes, you're approved. Let's get you in here. And it's usually not that fast.
And it's divine intervention and divine timing, or like I tell people, it's the kairos, that's God's appointed time, and not necessarily the chronos times, which is chronological time, like the time that we as human beings go by. Like the times on the clock. But whenever God's timing is involved, like he could do things in the blink of an eye. Like he can do things like before you could say yes, he's already working on it because he's omniscient. He's like everywhere. Oh, sorry, that was my husband. He's everywhere. He's all around us. And sometimes, like when God is trying to take you to new levels, new dimension, then he has to get you out of a place of comfort to a place that's uncomfortable or not familiar so he can mold you and continue to work on the pruning process. And it's during that pruning process where God begins to strip away the old things and make you new and whole because he has so much that he wants to pour out and pour into you so you can be a blessing for other people.
I should end the podcast on that note right there, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna explain what's kind of briefly what's going on, and we're completely off of what we were originally going to talk about, but this is where we got to hit the nail on the head. And what we're explaining, guys, is when you're being called, don't fight it. Like, don't fight it. And trust me, like in the last, since early, well, when did they start? When did the rainstorm start, where the drops started going? And I joke around with people. I'm like, they're not like one drop. It's like he's got a little gun up there going, oh, check this out, Chad. Haha, boom, boom, boom. You know, just and I laugh at that because it's like my grandpa's up there with him now, my cousin's up there with him now, my grandpa's a complete jokester, and I'm just sitting there on the phone with my sister. I'm like, you're not gonna believe it. She's like, now, you know, her thing was like, now what? You know, it was like straight 2-3 weeks of just boom, 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 boom. And so I'm in the number one most drinking town in the area in I think United States. So Green Bay is 1 or 3 or whatever it is. Where I'm going is the other town that flips with Green Bay. So one year it would be Green Bay, next year would be Oshkosh. You're like they teeter totter. So they're pretty parallel with drinking issues. And I cleaned up. I'm up when I moved up here to clean up and go visit my church and kind of build everything up, build a relationship, build my walk. COVID hit. And the reason why I moved up here is I wanted the entertainment. Obviously, entertainment's the bars, the music, all that stuff. I came up here, nothing, like complete lockdown, nothing. And then now it's slowly opening back up. It's not, you know, Texas open. And I'm going to joke how I say Texas open because I know they just kind of let the gates open. But
Reballed it is kind of what Texas it'd be like, bam, wide up. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But we're slowly creeping back up to like 25%, which means you're still not back to normal. So I'm like, back in the day, I'm like, now I understand why you brought me to Green Bay. You know, back, I'm like, why am I always wanting to go to Green Bay? Why? And then now I know why. And I had this question with my sister. I'm like, okay, so what's the reason why I'm going down there? She's like, he's the only one that knows. I'm like, I get that. I'm like, he's going to give me, you know, a reason down the road exactly why. But I'm like, why are you taking a kid in the number one most drunk city and move it to the number 2 drunk city and literally move them 2 blocks away from the bars? She go, and this is coming out of her mouth and someone else. So, and this is multiple people that said this. They go, he's bringing you down there because you know exactly what's going on in those streets and you can help change people. I'm like, ooh, we're going to mic drop that right there. I'm like, now I get it. But it's, I did my part of it. Like the housing and where I'm going with the church and stuff. And we're not going to leave, you know, those stories for a different day. But right now, what I'm waiting for is I'm still within driving reach. I'm 45 minutes from where I'm currently working. Do I want to be there? No. But worst case scenario, I still have a job. Right now, it's the waiting thing, which I have serious issues with. And I'm assuming you probably do because you're a high performer.
Yeah.
So he's definitely testing me because this move's not going to occur till late July, early August.
So you're now in the holding pattern and you're trying to be patient, but then your impatientness is creeping up because you're like, what then? What now? Or whatever. And you're having all these questions. And then it's like, Oh my gosh, like I could totally like this is like at my front door. It's like I feel like Stephen Furtick right now. Jesus is at my door knocking. Because I found out that I was going to be laid off in December on December 1st, which was 1 week after my dad passed away. My dad passed away on November 25th, which was the day before Thanksgiving last year. Found out that I was going to be laid off from this Fortune 500 company that I worked at for 7.5 years. Then they're like, oh, but, and I was like, okay, there's always a but, a big B-U-T. But you could work up until February because we really want you to train this lady. I'm like, first of all, I thought my job was going away. So if my job is going away, that means my job should be obsolete. So why am I training this lady? So then I was like, okay, you know what? Fine. I was like, you know what? I'll come to the office. I'm going to come there on my terms because now, like, I'm dealing with trying to prepare a funeral for my dad, trying to see when my family could come in. We're now in the pandemic. So the funeral homes are so busy. And I'm like, I want my dad to have a good homegoing service and etc. So then all of this stuff is going on and I'm like, Jesus, what is it? Like, I was like, man, I pay my tithes. Like, Jesus, I serve you. I tell people about your goodness, even though when I don't want to minister, like, I was there, and he's like, well, you know what? The problem is you're being disobedient. I'm asking you to be obedient. And out of your disobedience, I'm going to keep having you go around that mountain. Like, the story in the Bible where that guy kept going around the mountain. And then finally, the seventh time, that's when the walls came down until he did it God's way and he was obedient. So I was like telling my husband, oh, babe, like whatnot. And then my husband was working in a different city at the time because my husband's a chef. So then I called him whenever I found out the news that my dad had passed away in the hospital. I was like, babe, you gotta come home. He didn't come home the exact day that my dad passed, but he came over home the next day. And I was like, what am I gonna do or whatnot? I was like, oh, there's just so much stuff that's going on. And I was like, we have a mortgage, like we have all these other things. But then I kept hearing God just say, be still and know that I'm God. Like, if I provide for the birds in the air and I provide for other people, what more can I do for you? And then I'm like, but, and I was like, I had to take the but out of the equation because I have not worked in so long. I've always worked. I was always this independent woman. And I was like, now I got to depend on my husband. I was like, I want to get my nails done. I like to get manicures and pedicures. I want to get a massage. I want to go do sports or whatever, like acupuncture, just different things that I like to do that helps me recharge, refuel, and rejuvenate. But then I had to kind of look and say, okay, maybe it's God that is testing me because if he closes a door, he's going to have multiple doors. He's going to have open windows, open skies. Like he knows why he does things for a certain reason. Like, yes, it sucked losing my dad. He was like my best friend, like my A1 from day one. Like I could think about all the rodeos we went to when we saw Kid Rock and my dad started the Kid Rock chant. When we saw Gladys Knight, we saw so many incredible people. And I'm like, who's going to go to all those concerts with me whenever things are wide open again? And then I was like, you know what? I can't be selfish because coming up until my dad's last days, he was suffering because he went from being 100% independent where he's rocking out with the grandkids, he's doing yoga, he's teaching these guys who are trainers for the freaking Houston Astros exercises. And they're like, damn, your dad's doing that? I can't even do that. And then he gets wheelchair bound due to the hospital's negligence where my dad got paralyzed from the waist down. So then I stepped in to be a caregiver for my dad. And that's the hardest thing when you have to be a caregiver for your parent and not like the frame of mind, it's just so different because I was like, I don't have kids of my own, but here I am trying to do the best to get care for my dad and just go through all these emotional things. And I was spending more time with my parents than I was spending with my husband or than I was allocating for my job because my dad was my priority. It's like the circle of life. And I was like, I just know that I know he's going to get better. And I just kept, trusting God, things were going to improve at work, that my dad was going to get better. And God said, no, no, no. And I still don't have the reason, but you know what? if that door hadn't closed for me working for that Fortune 500 oil and gas company where I was climbing the corporate ladder, I had a company credit card. I got to use the company's limo service. I got Emerald Isle status. I was traveling. I was doing all those things to where he had to humble me and tell me, like, hey, you need to get off of that pedestal and you need to humble yourself. Your mission is to focus on impacting lives, spreading my journey, doing what your father did, talking to people in Walmart, talking to people in Kroger's. And I was always like, man, Dad, they know Jesus. Like, they know Jesus. Let's just get the groceries and go. Let's just get, like, but it's like, no, he's calling us to be the hands and feet of Jesus, especially as we're in this society where it's unprecedented, where there's political turmoil, where there's racial wars, where there's so much division right now between children and parents. Like, so many things are going on when you turn on the news. Gun violence is at its all high. There's so many things. And it's like when there's people like you and I, Chad, who are called for something higher, where we're not understanding where God is going to take us until he gets ready to, start to make starts to make withdrawals from the deposits that we're already sowing. Then that's when we're going to understand why he had to do things, why it's going to work for his glory, and why he has to do certain things for him to get the glory, not for Genesis to get the glory, not for Chad to get the glory, but it's out of obedience and by us stretching outside of our comfort zone for us to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Like, who is he calling us to wash? Whose feet does he want us to wash? Does he want us to pour out our last oil and sweep his floor with it? Does he want us to, talk to that kid who may be about to, drink his last drink, and maybe youth come in and step in and prevent him from taking that last drink, or, getting involved in a drunk driving accident or anything like that? You just never know how God is going to use you to be the voice and be the hands and feet, because you've been there. So you could relate to people who are in the bars. You could relate to people who are in the street. You have that, I guess, Southern charm that you could kind of relate to people who are kind of like rednecks, hicks, and tell them, hey, have you tried Jesus? Have you thought about this? And you could be your authentic self, where you could say, I've been there, like, but I'm 500 and X amount of days sober. Like, I'm now turning my life over to God. Like, I'm sold out. Like, this is what I went through. If I could do it, like, God took me, a broken man, and he's rebuilding me and making me whole. And I see myself as Christ sees me. I see myself as having grace, having peace, having mercy. And it's not easy, but this is what I'm doing.
So I'm going to end it, and I'm going to end what I just said. I'm going to edit that out. After your phenomenal preach, where can we were supposed to talk about your book, and it just completely went on a phenomenal message. Where can we find you at?
So you can find me on Facebook as Genesis Amaris Kemp. I'm on Instagram, same name, Genesis Amaris Kemp. If you want to email me, you can hit me up at genesisamarisKemp@gmail.com. I do coaching now for people who are aspiring to just get to where I am, or just kind of learn from me. But hey, I'm a person, you're a person, so just don't put me on a pedestal. I have flaws just as the next woman or man. But if you want to get coached by me to talk about maybe life, business, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm your gal. So there's no skin in the game.
And guys, that originally was what we were supposed to talk about, but I will take exactly what you said as the main podcast, because that is, I'm not even going to turn money. That is the glory of everything. So thank you.
You're welcome. You can always have me back whenever you want to talk about the book.
I'm not even, like, to be honest, I'm not even mad. Because I'm like, okay, she's hitting me with she's hitting me right now with knowledge, and she's hitting me with the bat. So I'm like, Chad, shut up. Just let her keep going.